Okay, that was me.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm recording too.
Okay. All right. Lost my tea. Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the Creative Nectar podcast. I am your co-host, Stephanie Gray,
And I'm Jenny Hahn. Hello, everyone.
and we welcome you if this is your first time or if you are returning. We're so glad you're here again. And today we're talking about perfectionism and people pleasing, which is a huge topic for both of us. We both have personal stories to tell and a little bit of creative magic to go around with that. Talking about, can we creatively overcome these things or at least keep them in check? And um, I let's find out, right? Let's talk about it. So let's dive right on in, Jenny. I know you like to go over what our particular topic is about, like for people who may not completely understand what people pleasing is or what perfectionism is. You want to share?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's bring a little bit of context to it. Yeah. So, as you said, we both have had a lot of personal experience with this, and I know a lot of folks have. But just to kind of go over the basics here, when we say perfectionism, what we're talking about is that striving for flawlessness. See, I can't even say it. Striving for flawlessness with critical self evaluations that are often concerned with other people's perceptions of us.
Mm,
So, and this can show up, this can be actually praised in our culture, right? Like there can be so-called positive aspects of having perfectionistic tendencies. You might present as being hardworking, reliable, or having high standards. But there's a lot of negative associations too that can be very harmful to both ourselves and to others. We can be critical, we can be driven by fear, we can have unrealistic expectations. I mean, there's a whole thing about killing your creativity. It can be, it can limit our risk taking, our creative problem solving, just and it can be painful. I mean, I speaking for myself, someone who has struggled with perfectionism my whole life, pretty much, at least from my childhood. Um, there's it cuts us off from who we really are, and this constant striving to meet some outer ideal that doesn't it's not attainable, like it doesn't even exist. So yeah, so that's perfectionism. People pleasing, very similar. There's a lot of these have similar veins. People pleasing is also basically prioritizing other people's needs over
mm,
our own. So again, there's this kind of um, being cut off from ourselves and from our own desires, our own wants, our own needs. And some people call it the nice person syndrome. So, needing to be chronically nice, not rocking the boat, avoiding conflict, um, oftentimes having a difficulty saying no when we want to say no, fear of rejection, usually not strong personal boundaries. So, and that can lead to inauthentic relationships as
mm.
well.
And resentment.
Resentment, absolutely. Absolutely resentment of, yeah, not having our needs met, not even, maybe not even knowing what our needs are.
Well, thank you, Jenny, because for bringing that up, because that's been my story of not knowing what my needs have been. At, as the creativity, as I began to do process art and creativity began to help uncover some of these things, that was one of the first things that I realized. First of all, boundaries. Second of all, what is it that I want? And boy, that can unleash quite a lot in the body and in
Oh, yeah.
imagery and all of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the question is, like, because so many of us are raised with these standards and ideals, we might have picked it up as a trauma response from childhood, but also our culture itself.
Mhm.
You know, we are living, at least here in the West. I mean, this is kind of a norm of what you might call, you know, white supremacy, patriarchy, capitalist culture, is this perfectionism, this need to strive for a certain ideal and to kind of stay in line with it, right? And that isn't, I mean, that's not a part of that's not something that can be found in all cultures of the world, but it is definitely something here in the West that most of us are familiar with, of having unrealistic expectations, living in grind culture, always having to do, always having to prove ourselves, always having to achieve, and kind of being measured by this external measuring stick, I guess, of comparing to others and whatnot.
Well, absolutely. And I think the rise of social media has made it even worse. I mean, I caught
Oh
myself
yeah.
watching social media of people cleaning their houses and having these spotless houses because that's one of my things, right? And having, a flawless face with, makeup and just all whatever is your thing that you are using to keep yourself from yourself. You can find a whole
Right.
a whole avenue to go down on social media where it reinforces that, whether it's overworking
Absolutely.
or flawless image, yeah.
Or the perfect body. And you
Yes.
know, and of course there's an industry behind every single one. There is the, I mean, this is what, again, kind of what we're conditioned with is the commercials, the advertising, the perfect solution that you need for whatever you feel is your flaw in that moment, the flaw of the day.
Well, can you imagine if there were no flaws? I mean, everybody would go out of business, right?
Right? Our entire
Would all just
society
crumble
would
down.
collapse.
Well, and honestly, I
Yeah.
feel like that, like we've talked about on here before a lot, is that there is a society that is crumbling, an old
Yeah.
way that just cannot continue to hold itself up because we're turning away from that slowly but surely. And,
Right.
it's like we can't sustain it any longer in our bodies, in our hearts.
Right. And I think, yeah, yeah, I love that you mentioned that. The bodies, I mean, those of us who do have some sort of chronic illness or autoimmune, um, yeah, illness. I mean, I feel like our bodies just can't take it anymore.
Well,
And
that, yeah.
and we're tired. I mean, so many of us are just tired of this endless striving, this endless quest for external validation set by standards set by other people or by the system itself. It's just not sustainable. It's not
Mm-mm.
sustainable to the planet either.
Yeah, the whole system, yeah, is doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, for me, the people pleasing and the perfectionism, I mean, it goes hand in hand for sure. It's basically just for me, it's self-neglect and it's a way of hiding or avoiding shame, I think, and it
Mm,
started early, early, early on for, I don't even need to go into that because I've gone into it so many times before on here, but just early childhood stuff and adoption and all of that. And
right.
I have uncovered layers upon layers, and that's why I love that you've used the word recovering so many times, because it is recovery for me at least. It's like bits of it will fall away, but then and there's still pieces that hang on, and I have chronic illness, and I am seeing now that it goes hand in hand like you just said. I at this
Mm,
point in my life, I've had some debilitating neck and shoulder pain to the point where I really can't do much of anything except sit in stillness. And it's perfect because I literally asked for help to overcome my perfectionism and my people pleasing. More perfectionism at this point. The people pleasing has gotten much better,
Mhm.
and I got it. Like, I got it in spades. My body cannot do it right now. And I have uncovered so much internally that's going on that has caused this. And it is,
Mm.
I mean, it is shame. It is like it's creating like hurt in my own body to make myself pay for something I may have done. It's internalizing what people have said to me rather than speaking up and saying, wait, that's not fair or whatever. It's just swallowing it and taking it in for decades. And I can feel it. It has its own energy. And that's what's going on right now in my body. So it is fascinating that we're having this conversation right now, and it's also happening in my body. It's just
Wow.
unbelievable
In real time.
in real time. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much information there, it sounds like. And really what we want to where we want to go with this, I think, is sharing how creativity can help with this. Like it can help uncover, and I know that's something that we both use a lot
Mhm.
is because creativity can be a tool for exploring, well, what is that feeling in the body, or what is the flavor or the look or the feel of that shame? What are the messages that are showing up? And one thing I like to ask is who am I underneath these these layers of conditioning of perfectionism and people pleasing? Who am I really? And getting in touch with those desires and those, just, I mean, who is in there? It might sound strange, but like, to kind of touch on my background and story a little bit, I had an eating disorder through most of my young adult life, and was anorexic during college, particularly during art school, and then started my recovery soon after that, right around the time that I found process art, our teacher, Sarah Oblinger's group, and started meditation. But it was like there was this hole in my soul, so to speak. Like I did not even know who was in there. I mean, I don't know how to, it's hard to even put into words. Um, yes, on the on the, like, outwardly, I was presenting as a high functioning, high achieving student, good grades, nice person, pleasant, all of that, right? All the people pleasing stuff. But it was like I was terrified of myself. I was terrified of what I didn't know, of what was really in there, who is in there, what is driving me besides this fear of imperfection. So that is where, and at that time in my senior year of art school, I decided to do an independent study because I was in commercial art. I was in the illustration department, and we were learning, taking assignments and doing illustrations. But I knew there was something in me that was needing attention. That it was like I didn't give I didn't give any cares about, trying to get commercial jobs at that time. It was like, oh my gosh, like there's this soul need. And so I did a couple of paintings at that time that really spoke to it. And one was called Paralysis of Perfection. And it was like this porcelain doll that was like, it was like all confined, and anyway, there were these kind of figures around her, all these external voices, and it was like this perfect little porcelain. Anyway, I will probably share these in our community, um, so that you get the
Great.
visual of it. But another one was called Driven by Fear. And it also involved sort of a mask. And there was this kind of Medusa like figure with all these arms everywhere and this big plastic smile just pasted on her face. But all these arms, it was like doing, doing, doing. That was It was like when I stopped doing things that I finally would catch up with myself and that core emptiness and that core shame. So always staying busy, always achieving, you know, but it's like, what is under that? What is under that? And it took years of building up the courage and the community and the support of being able to start to go within and really just explore and see, like, start to feel my emotions again, feel my feelings, feel into my body. And I'm telling you, the process art, all of this just really, it was one of the biggest supports I've had,
Yeah.
bringing mindfulness into this experience, being, starting to explore what it feels like to make mistakes, what it feels like to be messy. I mean, that's where art making can really come in and support with this. What does it feel like to be messy and to play with that imperfection and to bring self-compassion, to bring self-care to this form, to these emotions, and really start to explore what is below all these layers of conditioning.
Mm, well said. And that's so beautiful. That has such beauty in its own way, you know. And I I think for me, process art probably was I mean, we've talked about this a million times, but it's it's the only way I think I could have even begun to break into this guarded being inside of here,
Mm.
this fragile little little girl. I want to ask you
Yeah.
though, I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but do you still struggle with perfectionism and people pleasing in your life right now?
Yes, I do. On almost a daily basis, actually. It doesn't have the grip on me that it had in the past. I mean, obviously it played out in super destructive ways in the past, and I could go on even more about that. But it's like that programming is something that when I'm not paying attention, when I'm not watching carefully,
Mm,
it is still so deeply embedded that when I wake up in the mornings, if I don't pay attention right away and catch it, it's like the auto programming that starts to play. And it usually shows up as I'm not enough, I'm not doing enough, I'm not good enough. Um, and it takes different forms.
mhm,
But, um, now being a self-employed artist and doing things a little differently than when I had to get up and go straight to my day job, it's like that I can get bombarded with those messages of like when I'm setting my own schedule, when I'm creating my own work in the world, it's like this feeling of not measuring up, feeling of never doing enough. And I mean, it actually, that's nothing new. That's something I've dealt with most of my life. But it's just interesting how even when we start to overcome these things,
mhm.
it can sneak in the, in the just even in the slightest ways. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm not as obsessed with how I look or how I present the way I did in early life. I can go out in public without makeup on or without getting ready, but yet it still can play into just on a daily basis. It's that shame that you were talking about, I think, and that feeling of not enoughness that so many of us struggle with. And again, whether it shows up as I'm not exercising enough, I'm not painting enough, I'm not far enough along in my career. There's so many ways.
yeah. So many ways to abandon ourselves in it. and trade it in for what the validation of someone we don't even know or who, that doesn't really exist.
That doesn't exist. It's like
Yeah.
this unknown, this hovering ideal that doesn't, when we look for it, it's like it doesn't even exist. We're
Yeah,
all following this program that's just completely imaginary.
absolutely. Well, I had to ask because I mean, I think that's, and again, that's another thing we talk about on here, but I think that's a misnomer. Like it's a one and
Mm,
done. It's okay, well, I have overcome something. And so that means it's never going to rear its head again. And I believe
right,
that it's a spiral dance, right? I mean, and we're
mm,
spiraling and we're spiraling and we're going to hit little pockets. And depending on what we're ready for in our bodies and our psyche and our hearts, is what we will encounter and what we'll be able
right.
to transmute. So, yeah, I mean, it still hits me too, obviously, obviously. But my God,
Yeah.
where I would be without creativity. And I do want to touch on, so as I mentioned earlier, I've had this shoulder and neck thing for several weeks. And I haven't really been able to create very much. I have, but it's been in pain. So I have been sort of moving away from the traditional way that I create and instead using imagination. So because I have, years of creating, I can now go into my mind's eye and scribble with my body in a different way, with an imaginary paintbrush or creative tool, whatever I choose. Same with color.
Yes.
I can work with color. And that's been reassuring. I fully expect to be back on my feet and be able to do things again at some point. But if not, I'm
Right.
okay too. It's like there is many ways to meet that creative spark without, even if you can't physically pick something up.
Mm. I love that you are speaking to that so much because yeah, the imagination is such a powerful tool, and there's no reason why we can't or shouldn't be able to use that, especially when we're limited, either physically or, like we've said in other shows, like if you're in a meeting or something and you get triggered, or if you're in the car and you can't write or paint, or maybe you could sing, but it, I love that of being able to use the imagination, because as we've mentioned in I forget which show it was, but when we're not using our imagination creatively, we might be using the imagination toward worry or imagining what we don't want.
Right.
And the imagination is very powerful for, I mean, for visioning a future that works
Yeah.
for ourselves and for the world. And there is so much power in it as a creative tool. And I think we often discount that if we're not creating some physical product in our art form that can be consumed or shared or what or shown. But no, it starts, I mean, it can start with the imagination, and I just love that you're speaking to that.
Well, yeah, me too. And I'm I'm actually grateful for the opportunity to be able to explore it in this way. All of what we've just talked about, my insecurities and things that have been harbored for decades that I haven't noticed even after years of work and just having
Yeah.
having the gratitude to be able to meet it differently. I mean, I think that's what creativity and process art has really helped me with is meeting it differently and that messiness that you talked
Mm.
about. That's messy.
Mhm.
Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I could go on and on about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we could do a whole nother show about it. Because yeah, being able to be messy is, I feel like that's one of the doorways through the perfectionism and the people pleasing
Mm,
is, there's something about getting messy and just doing whatever the heck you want on the page with the paints or with words, whatever your creative medium is, and to really explore what the needs are, what the desires are that are yours, that are not what somebody else told you you should want or need, but what is yours. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also, you get to explore, like, okay, what's it like to paint outside the lines? Because I was always told in school and everything, you have to be really neat and keep your color inside the lines, and the colors need to be correspondent to what they really are in real life and all of that. So you get to explore
Right.
what it's like to go outside the line and oof, noticing that in my body and just being like, oh, I don't like how this feels.
Yeah. Or what if the sky wasn't blue? What
Yeah.
if the sky, whatever. I mean, what if a person had 8 fingers and 2 heads? And I mean, it's just, yeah. It might sound silly, but it's like these are ways that we can play in very small ways, but we can begin to play with like challenging these
Yes.
assumptions, challenging the assumptions and the conditionings. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a way to creatively play, notice, feel it in our bodies,
Feel
and
it.
push it just a little bit. Be like, what if I didn't have to color outside or color inside the lines today? Just for
Mhm.
30 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that question, "What if?" I mean, that's really what it, I think, comes down to. What
Yeah.
if I didn't color inside the lines? What if I said no this time when they asked me to do this?
Yeah.
What if I took the rest of the day and took a bath and went outside in nature or whatever,
Right.
we can begin to bring these what if questions further and further out into our life, and so that our whole life is our creativity.
Yeah.
And our imagination, and being able to make those decisions for ourselves, and not needing it to look a certain way.
Yeah. Yes. Amen to that. And I know this feels like a different flavor of a few different podcasts we've done, I think this year. I'm
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
they might have been from season 1. So
Okay.
I know that our episode number 7, How to Find Magic in the Mistakes, actually has a lot of similar things that we're talking about. That would be a great thing to check out. Also, I think it was number 13, How to Overcome Comparison Despair.
Mm,
If you find yourself always comparing yourself to others and how you measure up and comparing your art and despairing over that, that's a great episode as well.
yeah, and the one that was coming to my mind too that you were sort of mentioning, which was the consciousness being hijacked. How like,
Oh, yeah.
because when you begin to learn what it is that you like and prefer and want and create from the inside out, then there's no need, like you don't
Yes.
have the need for anybody else to tell you what you should and shouldn't like.
Right. Right. I mean, these topics, they go with so many. It all
Yeah,
kind of fits together. Overcoming fear as a creative block. I mean, it all ties in together.
yeah.
It's really about coming home to ourselves, to our own truth, to our creative spark within, and
Mm.
allowing it with compassion, with curiosity. I mean, it all ties together.
Yeah, becoming real. I love
Becoming
I
real.
love that whole like Velveteen Rabbit
Yeah.
thing. Yes.
Becoming
And we
real.
know the Velveteen Rabbit did not have an easy go of it, right? It was rough going for a
Right.
while. Yeah.
Right. I love that analogy.
Me
Yeah.
too. Me too.
Well,
Well,
do we want to move into some practices then?
yeah, let's do. I will just quickly, I have a couple of questions that writing prompts. Um, The first one is, in what areas of my life do I allow perfectionism or people pleasing to run the show? That's always a good question.
Mm.
Also, how am I with the messiness of my life or just messiness of life? How am I with the
Ooh.
messiness of life? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that one I
I
mean,
love it.
that's still standard for me. Yeah, for sure. It's always good to check in with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Oh,
about
that's
you, Jenny?
great.
What do you have for us?
So for an activity,
Mhm.
I want to present the idea of playing with imperfection. And specifically doing this by either drawing or painting or writing about your wild self, your inner wildness.
Ooh.
So, however you interpret that, um, just imagining again, like who is in there, who is below all the layers of perfectionism and people pleasing? Who is it that's like, screw that? And really getting curious about it, getting and then allowing yourself to play with it. So I did a drawing the other day in our Creative Soul Friday monthly group that we do as part of our community, and I really let myself play with this of letting this old wild woman out, um, and in a cartoony kind of drawing with markers. But yeah, having fun with every wrinkle, with the screaming, with the energy, and wild hair going everywhere. But you can take this as far as you want it. I mean, really, it's that untamed spirit within us, the just this most essential rawness that we all have. It's somewhere in there. It might be completely buried over, and it might freak you out
Mm.
to start to look at. I mean, this kind of ties in with shadow work as well. It's like, who have we been stuffing down our entire lives that is demanding to be seen and heard and wants to come
Ooh.
out? Yeah.
That's really enticing. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and have fun with it. Like, really, there can be so much fun in just really exploring and pushing that edge to see who that is and what they have to say.
Yeah. And the more details, the better.
The more details, the better. The messier, the better.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah, it feels like this is sort of coming to its natural close.
For
Unless you have,
now,
yeah,
we
for
might
now.
we might have to do another
Yeah,
episode at some point. I feel like we could talk about this all day. And I know
absolutely.
we both have more stories, and listeners, if you have a story that you want to share with us, we'd love to hear it. Because so many of us, I feel like, are dealing with this. And yeah, it's good to start looking at and really just coming home to what is true in us and what is real, and allowing that to guide our lives.
Yeah, that authentic part of us, that real part of us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
creativity is such a door into that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, well, let's chew on that for a while and see
Yeah,
what
and this
shows
will
up.
be this will be the last episode for just a little bit. We're going to go on a quick hiatus. Jenny's going to go on a book tour,
Yeah,
and going to get some stuff done, but we'll be around still. And our community
yeah,
is still up and running. If you feel like joining our online community, that would be delightful. We would love to see you there. Of course, we'll be sharing on Instagram, Facebook, all the things. And you can go back and listen to episodes. And we'll be back in what? I don't know, about 6 weeks or something.
yeah. We'll start
Yeah.
season 3 at that point.
Yeah.
So, yes, yes. As always, if you are getting nourishment and inspiration from these episodes, please, please, please leave us a review or a rating on whatever platform you're hearing this. We really appreciate it. It helps more people to find us
Yeah.
ultimately. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah. And you can check out everything we have to offer and more at creativenectarstudio.com. And I
Yes.
guess until next time, wishing everyone a happy spring, or, you know, wherever, whatever part of the world you're in and what you're
And
going through
whenever
right
and
now.
whenever you're hearing it, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and wishing you just realness and yeah, just keep it real.
Keep it real. I think that's good. All right, folks, keeping
All
it
right.
real.
Bye-bye.
Bye.